Yes, welcome to my videos. In today's video, uh, we are going to talk about the phenomenon of the Arua boys. What was the Arua boys? What was it all about? How did it all get started? Uh, as I mentioned earlier, this is part of our Jude Bus or Jude Business online program, which is educational. Some about lifestyle, others about culture and tradition, others educational packages. And today, this one is about lifestyle. I want to take this responsibility to enlighten the whole world because I know this is a story which very few people either know or understand or can even come bold out to tell. Yes, the Arua boy or Arua boys, which became a common slogan in Kampala around 1980, especially 86, up to around 1990. This slogan or phenomenon took place after the fall of Idi Amin government. In 1979, the Liberation War, which showed the Tanzanian soldiers together with the forces which were now within Uganda that ousted Idi Amin. When they expelled the Idi Amin's government, most of their focus was on Arua because it was known or it was perceived or understood that Idi Amin hailed from Arua. Yes, it's true, Idi Amin was a Kakwa by tribe. Kakwa is a tribe in the West Nile region, and Arua being the main town, it was actually a regional town up to today. It attained the city status, and it continued to serve the entire West Nile region with all resources, despite very numerous districts having emerged from the then Arua district, which included Koboko, Yumbe, Maracha, Teregu, and Vura, which are now all districts of their own. Despite now them becoming districts, all activities happening there end up being serviced from Arua city. As such, Arua is a big name, and Arua being a border town, not that it's really on the border lane, but strategically it is the biggest town on the Ugandan side, bordering DR Congo and South Sudan. So Idi Amin definitely wielded a lot of influence in the region, and particularly in the town. Though practically you will find little trace or evidence of Idi Amin having lived in Arua. As such, this misconception, when Idi Amin took power and he led his 8-year government from 1971 to 1979, with all the good and bad he committed in governance, the entire Lugbara community became a contemned tribe in the face of the rest of the Ugandans. As such, the liberation war saw a lot of revenge attitudes and atrocities committed against the Lugbara, and the Arua town suffered heavy vandalism and the demolition of structures, buildings, and all valuable resources you can imagine, like the satellite, the radio station at Ombachi, and many other infrastructure which were on the ground. And during the Idi Amin regime, not really many Lugbaras or all Lugbaras benefited from Idi Amin's government or were directly involved in the government, because in practice or in reality on ground, the dominance of Idi Amin's governance by any indigenous entity had no boundary or no tribal definition. He had identified himself more with the Muslim fraternity. As such, Arua was largely manned or serviced, or I could say operated by a business class, which were largely the Nubians, aided by the Muslims. That meant unless you became a Muslim, you will not fit in the game. You will not actually rise among the Maftamingis. Maftaming was a brand name, a kind of code name given to the rich guys, the tycoons of the regime. They were the ones who owned big businesses and literally ran the society. And this trend not only continued to marginalize, but actually literally destroyed the Lugbara presence and identity in the affairs of running the government and businesses of that time in Arua. More so, it suppressed the indigenous people, the Aivus, and any other settlers within Aivu who may have come from other Lugbara tribes like Terego, Maracha, Yumbe, because we not only see ourselves as one people, but the truth is we're one people. And through intermarriages, we tend to uh, integrate deeper and stronger. Hence, largely, the settlers who were mainly, the indigenous settlers who were mainly Christians, suffered immensely under their Muslim brothers who controlled most of the activities. Women and children of Christians had a little freedom in doing things freely in town. They had to be either accompanied or overseen by men, otherwise, they can be attacked at any time on the roadsides or within the marketplaces just to cause them embarrassment and inferiority complex. This was the background of what eventually produced the Arua boys. When the Idi Amin regime collapsed in 1979, every service collapsed because the regime went with its cronies. All the business people of that time, they evacuated the town, they evacuated the suburbs, and they all ran to exile. Even when war was still looming from a distance, they evacuated themselves. And the indigenous people remained, first of all, without provision of basic service because they were the ones who were able to supply goods and services, particularly manufactured items. So there became scarcity of even basic goods like soap, sugar, salt, to an extent that the governments, the interim governments between 1979 to 1986, before the current NRM government came into power, provided short-term solutions to some of these challenges. I recall very well during the Obote II government, which came immediately in power after the overthrow of Idi Amin, had to introduce a, a system of supplying basic needs to the population, which was termed as Window 1 and Window 2. I may not go into the details of that to save time on the focus of the main theme on topic. And through the Window 1 and Window 2, a government parastatal called Foods and Beverages was the one which ensured that the basic needs like sugar, salt, soap must reach the population, and it was now rationed. Every family had a limit of how many kilos to buy, however much money you may have, but you are limited to buy a specific quantity until the next arrival of the supply. And this was the scenario. People began suffering. None of the indigenous people knew business, and they were feeling alien even to Kampala because they could not know exactly where sources of supplies come from. Those governments were short-lived. Another government came, short-lived. Yusuf Lule government, short-lived. Paul Mwanga government, short-lived. And then Binaisa government, short-lived. And until when NRM, by then NRA, Liberation Army, together with the Makombozi, those are the Tanzanians. Now, when the current government settled totally in control, so the period between 1979 and 1986 was mad with confusion. You could not understand who is in charge and who is answerable and who you look to. Locally, the population used the period to settle squares, internal squares, by killing each other at will at night hours or even during the day, kidnappings, whatever. So, because of these hard conditions, because the Maftamingis had already abandoned business and services, supplies, the Arua boys started emerging. And these were very young men, brave, genius. They had to step in to find solutions. The road to Kampala was often with problems of attacks in the park. Vehicles could be hijacked with the entire consignments and diverted to mainly Masindi and sometimes to Gulu. People lost lives. So the Arua boys, I didn't like mention names here, but it's not a crime because though I don't have the consent of the family members, but this video, the purpose is educational and for the good of the future generation to understand how things happened. Nevertheless, the Arua boys was not something recruited or planned or organized. It was just out of the goodwill and the pain also people were suffering that these young men came out, sacrificed to brave the long journey to Kampala and find a way to buy merchandise and take it to Arua. And indeed, when they ventured into that, it was a boom. Within a short time, at least people were able to access all the basic services. Soap was in adequate supply, salt, sugar, clothes, and the rest. And on their side, they made money. They made good money, though risky. They made good money. So they had impact even up to here in Kampala. They were able to purchase goods in big quantities within short time and in cash. Because whatever they took there, they will sell it in cash and within the shortest possible time. And they will rush back to buy more. They became a respected name in Kampala, hence branded Arua Boys. And at the same time, they found their ways, also access to valuables of that time, like the gold business, which was silently previously being controlled by them after Mingis and the soldiers, the army. This gold was mainly coming from Congo, DR Congo. The Arua boys were able to access gold and avail it in open market in Kampala, though it was illegal trade, but it was brisk business. They made fortunes out of this. Even a dollar was illegal. To be found with a dollar was criminal. So they will still also access dollar and sell dollar. So the volume of trade these Arua boys propagated between these years, mainly of confusion from 1980 to 1986, was very immense. They did also a lot of developments, building houses, buying cars, and by then it was hard to find a car on sale. Actually, I recall many businessmen that time who bought their first cars will buy it from the missionaries. They'll buy those old cars which were being driven by the priests and brothers. But the Arua boys broke this paradigm and found out where brand new car, or at least second-hand cars, were sold from Bond. And they did not only stop with the trade here in Kampala, they penetrated Nairobi. They found a way of even getting petrol for each Arua, because every service was broken down. If motorcycles or cars could not be driven easily because most petrol stations were run down. So they began, others took on dealing only in oil and fuel and formed what became popular known in Arua as OPEC boys. Alongside the Arua boys, the OPEC boys also emerged. So this trend created a new group of tycoons started emerging, and hence they started rebuilding Arua to what now you find what Arua is. Actually, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this video, Many people don't know the heroes of the current Arua. The heroes are these unsung Arua boys. As I mentioned earlier, names needed to be known because they did something good to the society. But because I don't have the rights from the families, it may not be worthy. Because eventually, in my later videos, I will bring you out the details with the names and what each of them did or what they contributed to the economy, to the nation, and how also they became politically a threat. Not that they were dangerous to any government, but of course, politicians or governments started seeing them like rising stars, which may be uncontrollable. As such, policies began to emerge designed to crush them and crush them badly. Indeed, one by one, their candle flames went down sadly, and we lost most of them one by one. But their legacy remained. That was the most beautiful thing they contributed to the community. Their legacy up to today has remained with what you see, what has become to be now known as Arua City. Otherwise, thank you for watching my videos. I could go on and on and on and elaborate certain sector of this whole Arua Boys phenomenon, but in interest of time, I'll continue to bring you other details in other episodes. And what I want you to go as a home take with is the Arua today is a new Arua, which was actually started back by the Arua boys. And they took control. That was when actually control of the resources came back in the hands of the indigenous. And now their offsprings continue to man and develop Arua in peace and harmony with the rest of the world. I thank you very much for listening. We also thank the government, the current government, for enabling a peaceful transition and the empowerment of the indigenous people to take control of what belongs to them. Thank you very much.